What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today I am talking about the first offering of original material in 12 years by New York death metal legends Malignancy with Discontinued. This also came out on June 14th, this time on Willowtip Records. And like I said, this is their first one of original material in 12 years. They did do a re-recording of their debut album, Intaltrine Cannibalism. I think I may have gotten that right. But that was 5 years ago, and that was a re-recording that honestly don't think needed to happen. And I'm typically harsh on re-recordings because it's not needed. But yeah, as far as my honesty goes, I've only checked out Malignancy in passing, like the song Rotten Seed off of the debut album I thought was a really, really killer song. But yeah, I've never really dove in head first into this band, and I really should, because yeah, these guys are seen as kind of legends out of that New York death metal scene and kind of represent something of their own, and that's more of that, again, technical, brutal death metal sound. However, I will admit, it's not as brutal as I would have liked it to have been on this album, but you'll understand why as we kick things off with Existential Dread, and it immediately gives you what this album is going to be all about, and that's angular, technical, complex riffs, wild drums. Mike Heller puts on a perfect performance on the drums, after all, formerly of Fear Factory, currently in Raven, but this was the band he joined prior to those bands, and holy shit, he is a phenomenal drummer. I will never complain about his drum work. And even the bass work, like in the following track, Binary Paradigm, you can hear the bass pretty much perfectly throughout the entire album, and the mix was done by Lasse Lemert, who, of course, is mostly well known for his production jobs for bands like Ailstorm, and more of like the European folky power metal thing. So this is an entirely different beast for him. And while I do enjoy the mix, I'll talk more about the actual recording after the songs. But yeah, as far as the opening track, Back to It, yeah, it reminds me straight up of Cryptopsy. Like the riffs and the blast beats feel very much like Cryptopsy. And there's some groove that pops up on here, but there is some cool, like, chunky riffs and catchy blast beats that remind me of Dying Fetus here on this track. It gets thrashy for a bit, then there's some off-time rhythms. Again, Mike showing off his drum flair. But Binary Paradigm, not only you get wild bass work, but triplet chugs with off time at the start. There's some awesome bends. It's like, just bend those fucking riffs, motherfucker. Gah! But there's also some cool, like, suffocation chugs that show up towards the end of the song. And then Irradiated Miscreation kind of felt a little closer to like standard tech death, and there's even some guitar moments that show up later on that kind of remind me of early Obscura, and I'm talking about Retribution era Obscura, where it was a little more on the stiffer side. Like, some of these guitars come off as quite stiff and punchy, even though it's going for that more angular technical riff work. Purity of Purpose, here you start to get, actually this and the following track, Ancillary Biorhythms, I think I got that right. Both of these songs incorporate a little bit of dissonance, not to the level of bands like Ulcerate or Immolation or even Gorguts, but just little more dissonant riffs than what I would probably associate with this band. But I do like how with Purity of Purpose, it gets a little more cerebral with the attack that it's going for. Haunted Symmetry, we're getting back to the Cryptopsy vibes with the riff work. Again, brief grooves. Yeah, that's kind of a thing on here. And then to the final few tracks, Decomposing Divinity. Actually, the opening on this track has one of the catchier riffs on the entire album, and I don't use catchy that much when it comes to a lot of tech death, but it kind of was a bit of an earworm at the beginning with this track. And then Oppositional Defiance, This one, more of those technical angular riffs, but there's more groove that shows up, and there's even at one point where the grooves kind of come off as, dare I say, dance friendly? I don't know. You could shake your ass to it, even though it's in a death metal filter. But then to the final track, Biological Absurdity, this one brings back, again, those Cryptopsy vibes, but then when it gets intense, like I will say this is maybe the most intense song on the album. It's almost like aborted levels of intensity with how fast the blasts are, and even Danny's vocals kind of get a little more like Svenko to an extent. And a breakdown, which I was waiting for breakdowns considering these guys are brutal death legends. And this was the only time on the album where you hear a true blue breakdown. Which does lead me to my criticisms with this album. Well, first off, when it comes down to the production, like again, Lasse does a great job with the mix, at least, like in terms of like making sure you can hear everything. The production itself, for a band of this caliber, I feel is a little too clean. I think they were going for more of that like straight up tech death production as opposed to like a more gritty, raw, nasty sound like they did back in the day from what I've heard. If the production recording itself could have been a little bit dirtier but still maintain Lasse's mix, I think it would have made this sound sonically better. And then, of course, the other main criticism that I have is that a lot of these songs pretty much just run together because it's just all about angular riffs and technicality. Granted, it doesn't come off as wankery like some tech death bands out there, but I was hoping to hear more brutal elements, you know, like perhaps some more breakdowns, more grooves, and it's like they tease you with groove just a little bit on a few of these songs, but it doesn't really pay off really at all. And I felt like that was kind of a big letdown, considering like in the stuff I have heard in the past from Malignancy, it's like they were able to balance everything well with technicality and brutal hooks. This just went for more of the technical side and lacking on the brutal side. Not saying these songs are bad. In fact, if you're into this type of tech death, it's actually pretty damn good. But for this band, I was kind of hoping for more groove and more brutality. Which is why I am going to give this 3 out of 5. I do think it's a good album for what it's doing and what it's going for. But for me, who was expecting to hear some more of those brutal aspects, I felt a bit let down. But what I did get in terms of a tech death album, better than most tech death I've heard in recent times. So I will give it that. But for Malignancy, kind of was expecting more of the classic elements. But of course, those are just my thoughts. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.